Welcome everyone. It's Anne Phey, your leadership coach. Thank you for joining us this evening for 365 Paid Forward with Life Coach University. I'm really excited to be here again. It's day 4 of the Everyday Give Back to the Community. So as part of Paid Forward, if you enjoyed or benefited from anything that was shared today by myself or the audience, please help somebody out and buy them a coffee, make their day, and do it in any way that you enjoy most to pay it forward. So following from yesterday, we talked about value and values. We're going to move on to another topic on leadership. So this is Anne Phey, your boss from hell, who become boss from heaven. And one of the things that I found that made the transition for me was coaching. And coaching creates this mindset change, which is really incredible. So have you had an incident where you had people in an organization that had been promoted because they were really great at what they do, and somehow as they got promoted, things started changing? So for example, someone who was newly promoted but then couldn't manage the team, or when you felt that, wow, someone who really comes in with all the right knowledge, but then they start to say, this is the way I want to run things, and they insist on doing things the way that they want to do it. Or perhaps a manager who starts to micromanage and looking over someone's shoulder and stepping in to do the team's job instead of delegating. These are very familiar scenes that we experience in our work life. And often the challenge is because the person has actually been groomed into manager role because of their past performance in being able to get the job done. So this is where one of my realization as a boss from hell was that I was promoted because I was great at sales, I was closing deals, and then when I start to manage the team, I realized that it needed skills beyond selling. And what are some of these skills? So often we talk about team management skills. How do you manage people? How do you do delegation? How do you spread out the workload? And how do you make sure that you are able to groom people so that they can step up and come into your position so that you can vacate a job and move on to your next role? So there are a lot of this kind of training that companies and human resource. So I saw a lot of familiar faces. Thank you for joining. That you guys are from HR, and you do realize that these are the skills that have not quite been developed. And that's why we create leadership development programs. And I meet a lot of executives who then start to take masters in business administration, MBA, so that it can be more well-rounded. So typically, if you came from sales, you would also want to understand how finance works. You want to understand how operations work. And if you're from the technical side, you really want to understand a little bit more on sales and marketing. How do you do the promotion? So today we're going to talk about two things. One is about the leadership development. What does it involve? And the second thing I'm going to talk about is something that has not really been fully developed in leadership development courses. So the first one, as we mentioned, are the master's program. So as part of my own career development, we had like mini MBAs within the company. For myself, I decided to step up and go for a master's in business administration because I wanted to know how the company operates as a whole. Because where I was being, in a typical position, you get promoted in a vertical silo, because you just move up the ranks based on what you know. And what we know is probably just a fraction of what the company does. So by taking a very broad-based course, you allow yourself to understand a full feature of the company. So some of the things that we talked about yesterday and the day before was, how do you develop the vision and the mission of the company, which tells you what you do, why you do it differently, and what's the ultimate ideal state that you aspire the company or the division to go to. So there will be things like all the different divisions that we'll start to learn on a broad-based management courses include things like legal. We do need to know a little bit about contracting, right? When is an offer, when is an acceptance, what's the condition of the offer, and there must be collateral, right? So we learn about legal stuff so that we understand how in business operation that contracts and terms and conditions are very important, and how do we make sure that we understand the legal team well so that we can work together. The other thing that we learn about is management. So we do talk about people management, and there are many psychologists that talk about top-down management. And of course, today we know that a lot of the management needs to be bottoms up, because we need to engage the team so that the team has a say in how the company is run, and then they feel a sense of purpose. So there are team management programs where we learn about the different structures of the team. We also could look into areas such as developing the organization structure and understanding how to optimize the processes. So if you're in a manufacturing area, you're probably very familiar with things like the total quality management, agile, which is very hot right now. Like, how do you create an agile team that's able to respond and create opportunities and work with the changes? And that is so on point these days. And of course, there are, as part of that school of thought on process optimization, you also have the Six Sigma Black Belt. You also have the new area called design thinking. So I'm trained in design thinking, which is really coming from a space where you're getting the team to let go of their role and step into the client's shoes and say, as a client, what would be the product prototype or the service prototype that beyond our imagination, that even if it's so ideal and unrealistic, we want to imagine that, and from that point then to create the design that is currently desired. So that is another area that is really hot that you can start to learn about. Yeah, and there are also modules where you could pick up about understanding human resource. So definitely in human resource, and got human HR friends on the call. So human resource, we learn about things like band and compensation, which is like, how do you create different levels of seniority within the company? How do you compensate them? Is it like the fixed salary, fixed plus performance? And if it's performance, how can you vary it? And how do you create this progression for someone in the company who can then move up the ranks or move up in terms of their compensation? And how then do you also look at developing your employees by throwing them across different cross-functional areas and learning different skills that would mesh up, but then support them in having a better overview as well as an in-depth development of the organization. So one of the hot topics that has been around this last 10 years is about developing a T-shaped professional. So a T-shaped professional is someone who is able to see across the board. So you are able to have the view of all the different divisions and roles and skills. And then you have the vertical one, which is being very deep in your expertise, where you know everything as much as you can, deep into where your role is focused on. So it's not enough just to know deeply, but you also need to know cross-functionally. And if you know cross-functionally, you also need to have an expertise. So this T-shaped professional has been something that we had been propagating. And in fact, a lot of the government departments are now looking at development of these T-shaped professionals. Yeah, other areas in terms of growing as a professional and as a leader is also learning about sales and marketing, because that is the front line of an organization where you are the one that is sharing with clients about, hey, what's great about this product. So we learn things like developing your unique selling proposition. And that's actually very useful, not just for your company product, but also for yourself as a person. What are unique qualities that's different from somebody else that makes us who we are? And if we are able to get to our own personal USB, how great is that you're able to see your beauty, where you could develop your strengths and really stand out from the crowd, right? So you learn about marketing. Of course, marketing has so many facets of the product. how do you manage your distribution channels through distributors, resellers. And these days, we talk about O2O, online to offline, offline to online, and what's happening in the whole e-commerce and online world. You learn about promotions. So how do you price something? How do you work with discounts, bundle deals? You also work with the other P, which is public relations. How do you deliver a public image about your product? And actually, everything that I'm sharing here, there are two layers, right? So when you're learning about this as a leader for your enterprise or your startup or your company, you're also learning about yourself, how we are positioning and marketing ourselves. So especially for my coach friends that are out there, I also encourage you to think about your own sales and marketing. So what is your unique differentiation, and how are you marketing yourself? What is your brand all about, and how are you doing the PR to promote yourself? Yeah. So we talk about so in marketing, you talk about PR, and you also talk about events, advertising, and of course, what's really hot these days is social media. And I got a friend who's been into the latest TikTok. So what are these different social media? How does it apply to our best target audience? And how do you become a known brand in the social media and dominate that platform for your company or yourself? Right. And there are also the other aspects on understanding operations, understanding customer fulfillment. And if you're in a company that deals with a lot of customer satisfaction and experience, these days, people don't just talk about selling their product or portfolio. They're talking about what is this customer experience that we are creating? Because a customer who has a great experience with your product or your portfolio, and increasingly, it's not just about the product service, it's the people in the company that we're having an experience with. Because people buy from people. They don't just buy a company, a product, or a brand anymore. That people experience, especially if you're in customer facing lines, hospitality, hotels, F&B, food and beverage, where you're constantly in touch with your clients. Those are the first ones, to really talk about client experience. But these days, client experience starts to go into the other kind of industries where you want to have a single view of the customer so that you are able to see what are the different ways that they are able to segment them, right? So that's a little bit of marketing in here where we say, okay, we're appealing to, like for myself, when I train coaches, I specialize in working with leaders. So we're looking at the 30 plus years and above who are ready to embark on their next journey by increasing their coaching ability so that they wouldn't even have a double ability to not just support their internal employees, but also to serve the bigger community by empowering them through coaching. So by creating that, I'm creating a brand, I'm creating my segment and my niche. And the thing is, people come because they know who you are. They buy into your brand. And when they talk to you, they know that you are sincere and you're driven by a passion to empower. So, what is your special customer experience, right? For yourself and for your company? Could you create something where people can say, I love this brand, or I support this company because I have this great experience. I know that the person will go all the way for me to make sure that I'm successful, right? So there is the client experience journey that we can start to map out, that we can learn as leader. So this customer experience pulls the entire organization together, because a client experience doesn't just start with the sales guy, because it comes from the sales, it goes to the client success team, it goes into the fulfillment, it goes into the post-sales support, and to a continuing client or journey to nurture and retain and continue to cross-sell and upsell, right? So this client experience is an amazing area. If you can really catch that on, you have customers for life. Another area that you might want to look into also includes what I call the whole sustainable supply chain. This day, it's very hot on sustainability, because sustainability is about how do we create a greener earth, making sure that we're environmentally friendly. And the supply chain is another important aspect, because these days with COVID, we knew that there were interruptions. People weren't able to go to work. You didn't have enough logistics trucks to transport your products. Factories couldn't produce in time. So when you talk about the sustainable supply chain as well, that includes like how do you create like a plan A and plan B, and how do you have visibility across your supply chain and be able to make changes. A local diaper company almost went out of business because the company started producing masks instead of diapers. So if they had, as leaders, learned about supply chain, they would have ensured that they had a second or third factory who can supply those products. So learning this is really about the survival and how your company thrives. Now, besides sustainable supply chain, is also visibility of supply chain. So if any of you remember, IKEA had this boo-boo where they actually had horse meat in their meatballs. So that was because of a lack of visibility in the supply chain, where one of the suppliers actually provided an alternative meat product that nobody knew about. So this is about visibility so that you know the source of the food product, where it comes from. And these days, consumers are really smart. So if they don't know, they'll start to wonder. But if compared to another brand that tells you we have organically grown products, or like in a shampoo brand, this is sulfate free, paraben free, and all, you will want to buy from a company that has that green sustainability and have visibility down to the source of the products. So these are all the things that we can learn about as leaders so that we are equipped with the business knowledge, the operational knowledge, and what else is really hot and happening these days. And of course, the last area that I want to touch on is data. So as we know, nowadays we talk about artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. So it's important for us to equip ourselves with the knowledge on what data is all about and how do we make use of data and how do we advance with technology that can support us in making our products better, right? So learning about what AI does, how do you use devices to increase the efficiency of the things that we do. And we also talk about how then do you use data analytics so that we can do predictive analysis so that we know that if a customer buys A and B, they were likely to buy C. And then if D were to happen, how would they respond? This is really us foreseeing and predicting into the future so that we can better plan for our support for our clients. Now, of course, these days, even marketing teams, they have to learn about the Kubernetes and all that. So we are coming to a generation where if we don't know about the latest technology that is happening, we're kind of like going to get lost because the new guys that are coming out are millennials and the even younger ones, they're the digital natives. And if we can't converse in these manners with them, which means that we are kind of slow and losing out. So being a leader means that we have to be up in the forefront, and equipping ourselves with all this knowledge is essential to us being successful. The second point, which I'm running out of time to cover, is the mindset. And that is something that we don't really have that much training on. And given the importance of mindset, I just want to tickle your curiosity so that you can come back tomorrow and I will share a little bit about the different kinds of mindset. There is a fixed versus growth mindset, and there is also the mindset of performance versus learning, and lots of interesting different mindsets that I've managed to pull up from Harvard Business Review, and also some of the latest minds in how we can grow our ability, going beyond the technical knowledge headspace into how do we embody a mindset that sets the foundation for us to grow as leaders and for our teams to flourish. All right, so I'm going to pause here to check in to see if there are any comments or questions. You can feel free to type into the chat. Awesome. So one of the questions that I have is, an MBA really necessary for a leader to succeed these days? Well, thank you for the question. Now, an MBA, yes, in some ways, I have, in fact, 2 weeks ago, I was part of the launch in the Nanyang Business School in Singapore, where we launched the Executive MBA together with a faculty member. I was pulled in because I was a coach and also because of my experience in being a leader. And what we realized that a lot of the masters could be either, number one, they were sponsored by the company because they see that it's important as a leader grows up in the organization, they need to have all this knowledge that I just talked about so that effectively they can run the teams and the company much better. Secondly, it creates the ability to collaborate across departments because now I understand what our marketing team, our sales team, and our technical or legal team is going through, so that we have the empathy and the understanding to work better together as a team. And especially if you're going up to a general manager or a CEO level, these are all the important ingredients to make sure that you get to be the best CEO or manager or leader that you can. I mean, even especially if you're running a huge company, that finance module of understanding the P&L and how do you calculate earnings per share and all these are critical when you're really moving up. Now, does it really help you? I would say yes. And would an MBA help you to earn more money? It may not. It just depends on the industry whether an MBA is crucial. So some industries like the consulting, they probably want people to really have an MBA in order to show that they have the cut and the standards and the ability to understand the business. And for other industries like the tech world that I was from, I actually ended up getting 2 masters, but it was just for my own learning experience. I didn't get a sponsorship from the company, but what it did for me was to build up this knowledge pool so that I am fully equipped to manage and understand all the different departments. So when my lawyer in the company is telling me about something, I understand. And when we're working through the finance of holding the profit and loss line, for the business, I totally understand when they talk about EPS, which is earning per share. Why do we need to ensure that we have the shareholders' confidence? So these are very important knowledge, and it, for me, helped to serve as a foundation for me to move up the organization much more quicker because I have the understanding. So it all depends on whether you think the MBA is really going to be great for you, because is it going to be helping you to move up faster because the organization requires that, the clients want it, or is it for your own learning knowledge? So even if you don't have a bachelor degree or master degree, that's okay. What I would advocate is, let's start from where you are. I always believe that there is this thing called lifelong learning. Wherever we go, let's have a learning attitude. So even if it's not a full-fledged course, let's learn by either going online. These days, we have lots of resources, or we can even learn by asking our colleagues to say, hey, what's happening in your department? Share with me, what do you do every day? And what are the key metrics that you're measured against? And how can I support you based on where I am in my department to help you become successful? And we keep an open mind and learning attitude and are always wanting to be of service to the other person. They will gladly share it with us what they're up to, and that forms a really great collaboration across the team. So it doesn't matter whether it's an MBA, so long as we are learning, and as we learn, we grow and we advance, and that gives us the capacity and the aptitude and the attitude to move ahead. So I have a question here. In my experience, what are the 3 skills a leader must have? Wow, that's a lot. That's a big question. If you guys are able to type You can share your answers as well. So top three skills a leader must have. I think I would probably, okay, everyone will give a different answer, and this would be my answer. My first thing is attitude. So your attitude basically forms the way that you manage and run a team. So if your attitude is one of positive empowerment, then you will really want to make sure that you do everything you can to help your teams succeed. Yeah. The second the second skill I think a leader must have is communication skills. So the way we communicate, it affects the impact, and the words we say have so much weight, especially if you're talking to a fellow colleague. Like we could say something in the most positive way and would yield encouragement, motivation, and wanting to get the job done. And when we communicate and show that we care, someone would want to work with you, right? So the third thing I would say is a top skill is really having um, agility, because agility is what we need in this world of change. We say it's a VUCA world because it's volatile, it's uncertain, there's always change. So if we are able to be agile, we adapt so that we can make the change for the team for the better. I'm not talking about changing our minds every other day, but being agile is being flexible to respond, anticipate, and predict what's happening in your industry or your company and be ready for it. Great questions. Now we're going to move on to another question. How can a leader avoid burning out? Good question. I think like if you went through all those courses that I mentioned, you would probably be spending so much time working and studying, and not to mention your personal commitments like your family and friends. How can a leader avoid burning out? I would say, firstly, having a coach, because a coach helps you to make sure that you are aware about what's going on in your life. Because sometimes, especially, some of us are hyperachievers, so we will want to do everything in the world and want to do it to like top grade standards, and then we just get burned out. In fact, today I had a conversation with someone over a networking meeting in the morning, and she said, did you realize that Margaret Thatcher had dementia? And it wasn't that her brain wasn't working, she was overworking her brain. So she was sleeping only 2 hours a day and she had dementia. So it really made me think that as a leader, do we work ourselves so much that we don't realize that one day we have just basically burn the ends of the candle on two sides? So I don't have a short answer for you, but it starts with being aware. Are we resting enough? And are we getting stressed out? Because sometimes you have this story about the frog in the boiling water. You don't realize the water is boiling because the temperature keeps increasing. So the level of awareness will come from your friends and family who tell you, hey, I think you need a break. The other signal would be from your body. When your body is unable to cope, you're falling sick, and that's a sure sign that the body's like, hey, I need a break. The third thing is your emotions. If our emotions are like roller coaster, that means something is out of balance. So take these cues and listen to them, because it is trying to tell you something. Great. Awesome. We've got lots more answers coming in. I'm loving it. So we're just gonna continue going. Next question. When a person's promoted to management but colleagues aren't happy, now the person's in a new role, are not supported by the team, what's the pathway for this manager to succeed? Wow, that's quite a loaded question. Let's see. When a person's promoted to management, my colleagues are not happy. Okay, so I would presume that this is when you are peers, and then one of the peers gets promoted because for various reasons, right? So there are so first thing is, for this manager, I think it's important for them to understand the reasons why they're promoted, right? So if they're promoted out of skills and ability, then it is something that the peers need to recognize and embrace. So for the manager that has promoted the person, it's important as a leader to explain to the team why I've decided to promote this person, right? And of course, this is kind of like at the point that you're creating this role and announcing the person to the team. But what I would suggest is let's step back and really look at the whole organization as a leader. How do you envisage this organization to grow? And be really upfront that these are the roles that we will have available, and have that discussion with every team member so that it is a transparent system. Because the last thing you want is to suddenly create this role and everyone's like, where did that come from? I could have been a candidate for the role, but I didn't know about it. So one is be transparent, share with the team so that everyone has a fair chance to get to that role and be promoted, and be very clear about what's the criteria for promotion. And when you declare the criteria, you better be objective, right? Because if you're not objective and you declare the criteria, people will start to doubt and your credibility goes down as a leader. So definitely have a plan and announce it so that when it comes to the promotion, when the candidate is announced, people can see that, the candidate has met all these criteria and that's why he or she is promoted. Yeah. Now, if let's say that wasn't done and this guy was promoted and people like, hey, could have been me, it could get very angsty, especially if you have a lot of super achievers that are doing well. Like, why her and not me? So how do you deal with that? I guess it is really to help and support and coach the new manager to demonstrate that he's able to do the job, right? So that includes like ensuring that the communication goes out, and the manager has got to start to stand up and really do the new promoted role well, right? And if the team still doesn't support, then it's really to understand what is the reason that they're not getting the support. One, it could be resentment because of the promotion. It could also be the person's communication style, right? If the person's communication style is not exactly collaborative, and we've seen many managers like that, then it does affect the ability of the team to work together. It could also be how do you say, various things, which actually this entire May we're going to talk about it. So it's about each individual's motivation. Do we have a common vision and goal? What are the agreed behaviors? And what does it mean with this person coming in as a promoted role? How does it impact and affect the different roles and the collaboration? So these are things that we need to open up for discussion. And it could be using what we call round table. So basically you get everybody in the team without the manager or with the manager, depends on the dynamics, and just say, hey, what's happening, right? What is missing in this equation? What do you want to see happen? And you should also do the one-on-ones so that everyone gets to air their grievances and and turn that into, what would you do? What is the one thing you would do to help this team work better? And often when we reach out this way and we say that we want to work better together, and the manager who's promoted can actually do this if he has enough gravitas, or he needs to build up that trust, to have the conversation and work from there. For myself, I have been promoted before with my peers. Some were really nasty experiences where they actually boycott me because there was a lot of jealousy and comparison. So as I mentioned, that was how I learned that if we are the boss, we need to lay it out so that it's very clear. And sometimes even if it's clearly laid out, like the newest, latest gets promoted faster than people who have been there for 10 years, then something must be amiss, right? And it's important for the team to understand why they were not promoted. And that's something that they need to work on. And when I actually work with the team members, say, these are the few things um, that is through observation. So you can do 360 feedback, you can do frank and open discussion. And when they realize that this is what they're missing, and how, as a leader or the newly promoted manager, you're there to help them to get to where they want to be, and you make good on a promise when they achieve it, I tell you, that changes the entire dynamics across the team. Suddenly, people know that you mean business. You're someone to be respected because you do what you say, and that they also see your heart is in the right place because you're there to support the team for the greatest potential and for them to move forward. And suddenly, that entire negative avoidance and climate turned into positive because they start to realize that you are a force to be reckoned with. You're there for them. And why would they not want to work with you? So even in the most desperate situation, you can turn it around. So I want to encourage you, if you're in that position and you're facing all these obstacles, first is let's reflect on ourselves. How did we get our promotion? Is it really justified? And if it's not, how can we make good? And if it is justified, what is the team looking for? What are the gaps? What are they unhappy about? Reach out. Be a, a, a good person with genuine mindset to say, I'm here to help and support you. And when people see your sincerity, they will turn around. But it does take hard work, and it takes a level of tenacity to wipe away those tears because we are social creatures. Can you imagine like not having anyone want to talk to you or go out for lunch with you? You got to pull through all that moments and prove yourself and show that you care, and that changes. And I want to encourage you that it is possible because I've done that, right? And feel free to reach out as well if you want to continue this conversation. Now, okay. Now, another question is newly promoted managers tend to be in a growth stage where they're finding their new skin as a leader. That's true. Very, very observant. And how would coaching help a newly promoted manager find his or her own leadership style and brand? Right, great. So this is a good question because this is about the coaching mindset. So before I answer your question, I want to talk about coaching mindset. The coaching mindset is about us taking off our blinkers and our lens to look at the other person and say, what is this person's strength? What do they need to help them flourish and grow into the role that they so aspire and are passionate to be in? So for us to have the coaching mindset, that's the first fundamental starting point. Okay, so now I'm going to answer the question. So how would coaching help this newly promoted manager? So by coaching, what we're doing is we're working with a manager to say, okay, so what kind of leader do you want to be? Are there leaders that you admire, that you want to emulate? And if you were to report to a leader that you admire, what are the qualities that you would want to see? And how does that compare with where you are now? Are there gaps? And is that an attribute that you are really strong in? So when you start to ask questions like this and the person starts to have a landscape, or a visual about where he needs to be and where he is now or she is, and when you start to see that, you start to have a view of what the person is really unique about. So earlier I talked about your unique selling proposition. So how are you different from others, right? So for myself, I found that I am someone who's very creative and innovative, and that is my strength because I would think of great ideas. And the other thing is I have a very strong commitment to seeing things being successful. So I play on that as my strength. So I would be like the one spurring, brainstorming new ideas. We'll get all the team to contribute and we'll together select the projects that we want to work on that's going to be winners for the team. So I play on that because then that is my motivation, that is my spark, and that's how I become my new skin as a leader. But what I was weak in, which is where I was very weak in being able to explain things in detail like down to part A to Z or what needs to be done, because I love working with people who are competent, and it's like tell you this is what needs to be done, they will go and get it done. So I realized that that was the area that I need to brush up on. So I would start making sure that for every plan that I do, I will have a rollout plan, a 30, 60, 90-day plan, what needs to be done, what are the critical success criteria, and I will make sure that I'll pair up with someone who's very operationally strong and work with that person to say, let's get those things done. And we'll partner together, right? So being as a new leader, you can't be like strong in A to Z. It's impossible. Then you'll be Superman or Wonder Woman. But then as you start to develop and say, I'm playing on my strength, I'm working with the team and partnering on areas that I need a bit more support on, and we will start to work with the team as well on where their strengths are. So as a new leader, having that overview and landscape would then entice them to be creative and thoughtful about how they're going to find their style or brand. Yeah. So for me, I made a track record throughout my career in creating like new initiatives. So when I was in sales, I would do first of a kind industry projects. Like for example, I work with insurance companies and we'll find a fraud management system that cuts across the different companies, right? So when I was in marketing, I created a cross brand and principal plus distributor plus reseller and solution partners into a tech symposium come breakfast roundtable. So that was my style. I create revolutionary breakthroughs. So find out what your strength is, and that will be your special style or brand. I hope I answered the question. Awesome, great. So are there any other questions or comments? Okay, that's looking good. So I think in summary, so today we talked about leadership and professional development. So I focus a lot more on the professional part, which is all the different multi-department skills. And these are all the different skills we can go learn. And if you have the ambition to go for the MBA or the company sponsors you, definitely take that up, because that will move you forward in terms of knowledge and ability to collaborate. Now, even if you don't start where you are, have the attitude of lifelong learning and just start by talking to your colleagues, help to understand how you can be of service, how you can work better together, and oftentimes over coffee or even over cross department or cross-functional projects, you learn a lot from the grounds up, and because they are an expert in their area, and you could build the relationship, you could learn, and you could work on projects together. And that's going to be the training that you have as a leader, to have that broad-based T-shape across different divisions roles, as well as the deep expertise to become the best of who you are. So the question we had about earlier about being promoted, about learning your own leadership style, that is the vertical T that you're going to be developing. So I'm excited. Thank you for joining, and thank you. Oh, that's a beautiful comment. Thank you for sharing your valuable knowledge, skills, and habits. I appreciate you. I appreciate you too. So for all the friends that have joined due to PDPA, I won't be mentioning your names, but I am so grateful that you've taken time off to join us today. And I will reach out to you personally to say thank you. And come in again tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be talking about leadership development on mindset. And if you have been with me from day one until now, you realize that the agenda is being formulated by you. Because if there are topics that resonate with you or that things that you want to know, you can just let me know and we'll make sure that we cover that. So thank you for hearing my stories. I hope that they are able to encourage you. And again, this is Anne Phey, leadership coach and a coach trainer for International Coaching Federation coach certification. I'm working on this with Life Coach University in the 365 Pay It Forward. So if this has been helpful, go make somebody else's day, support somebody and make them smile. And we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you so much for joining.